Welcome to Real Life Mentoring, where we explore real life issues to help you make an authentic difference in the world.
Hi, welcome back to Real Life Mentoring Podcast. It's Chris and Christina. Again, we are talking with Nathan Brewer from The Working Genius. This is part 2 of a 3-part series. And just by way of review, Chris, let me ask you this question. Nathan has been presenting The Working Genius. What we've already discovered, it's one of the fastest way to find out what kind of work that really brings you joy and energy. Very, very helpful to maximize team's productivity. What was one thing that stood out from session 1 or part 1?
What it did for me is gave me a practical perspective on organizing my work week
Mm-hmm.
and based on what gives me energy the most.
Yeah.
And then there's the aspect I'm fairly competent in a certain area, and there's another area that causes me frustration. If I spend my first half of the week only doing work that frustrates me, it will not be a good work week. So balancing those areas really, so paying attention to my calendar every week more deliberately.
Yeah, I think one of the takeaways for me is that personality testments have shown me in the past a better understanding of how I just kind of operate and present in the world. But this was how I function at work. It just confirmed, oh, of course, this is why this is my genius. And so I think if you're listening, if you really want to know, okay, how do I best function and why does doing this task get on my last nerve? This is for you. So, Nathan, we're so glad. Give us a deeper dive. We already mentioned that the Working Genius, there's 6 components. Let's take the time to really jump into each one of those.
Yeah, it's great to be back for part 2. And as we spoke about in the first podcast, there's 6 types of working genius as directly applied to our work. And I really love the Fahrenheit mentoring holistic approach. You guys have 6 areas. So we're specifically talking about professional development here. And it's so important to understand, we spend so much time at work, 40
Mhm.
hours a week, plus minus, depending on your job. But you want to be living and working in your sweet spot, what brings you the most energy and joy. And this is a great mentoring tool, really,
Yeah.
in professional development, if you are a mentor or a mentee, because it helps you understand your mentee much better and helps you as a mentor as well, mentor people more effectively. So it's an important tool because it shows, as you said, what type of work brings you the most energy and joy. Most businesses have people and teams that aren't maximizing their potential. And so this is important for that reason. You're going to help
Right.
people, teams maximize their potential and to help business team leaders solve this problem of their teams being ineffective, unproductive, not collaborating effectively, by discovering the individual team members or employees' working genius and then creating a workflow that really maximizes productivity. So that is, in a nutshell, what working genius is and why it's important.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's just take each one of these and break them down. Let's start with wonder.
Wonder. So if you remember from the first podcast, or if you're joining us for the first time, jumping into the second one here, wonders about the possibility. Could there be a better way? So they identify the need for improvement or change. They're often contemplating why. Why are we doing what we're doing? They're asking big picture questions. They're observing the world around them. Compared to other geniuses, it is not the most observable genius because a lot of what's happening is internal. They're very contemplative, chewing on things in their mind and in their heart. It's a very internal process, but they're very valuable. This genius is very valuable, and it's embodied by a person or persons because they challenge the status quo. So imagine a software company comes up with a new software and they are pushing it to market and they just want to get it out there so they can increase their profits. And then somebody raises their hand and says, wait, why are we actually doing what we're doing? Is this even aligned with our mission, our vision, our values? And actually, there's a few bugs in the software, so we might want to work those out before we even launch this. So they're very valuable to a company, to a team. They challenge the status quo in that sense. And what they really crave, that's what's interesting too about the 6 types of working genius, is they each have things that they crave and things that crush them.
Mm.
This is fun. So for wonder, They crave consideration. They want people
Okay.
to genuinely consider what they're wondering about and for their questions to be heard. So a way to show appreciation and to honor that craving is to say, hey, that's a great question. We need to consider that before moving forward.
The word
Boy, how
crushed, I mean,
invaluable.
that's pretty dramatic, right? The word crush,
Yeah.
it's not saying discouraged by it. This is crushed.
Yeah, I wasn't going to get into the crushings as well, but they would, for example, be crushed by being dismissed, by
Mm,
someone
Okay.
saying, these questions, who cares? They're
yeah.
not important. We don't have time to consider these. We need to move forward. That would crush someone with the genius of wonder.
Yeah. Well, and you've just given a taste to the listener that these are the kinds of things, if they have a consultation with you, if they want to sign up and get coached by you, that boy, this is invaluable information. So if you knew everything to consider and everything not to crush your team, my goodness, you could have a brand new team starting tomorrow if you implemented these things.
You said it.
Yeah.
That's great advertisement. Yep.
Let's
Yep.
go down to invention.
Right. So invention, as the name implies, invents things, generates innovative ideas and solutions. And as I described in the first podcast, each one of these geniuses, if you picture interlocking gears, they work off one another. So wonder initiates that process, and then invention responds to the need by generating innovative ideas and solutions. So wonder
Okay.
kind of raises the question, brings up the need, but they won't necessarily know what the solution is. And that's where invention comes in. They generate innovative and ideas and solutions. They're gifted to start new things. So that involves the skill set of being a visionary, of creative thinking, of strategic
Mhm.
thinking, where other people might be completely afraid of having just a blank piece of paper or a blank slate. People with invention love blank slate and a blank piece of paper. They can sketch out and architect a new business on that piece of paper, or a new church plant, or a new product, or a new service from
Mhm.
scratch. And they derive energy from it. They blossom.
So does an invention, that person would say, what if?
The wonder would say, what if?
What
And
if? Okay.
invention would say, I have the solution.
Have the
Mm.
solution. Okay. Okay.
And they crave freedom. They want the freedom to create and invent
Mhm.
without constraints or restrictions. So that resonates with you, Chris, I think.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Okay,
Don't
let's go
box
down.
me in. Don't constrain me.
Yeah. Let's go to discernment.
The third working genius is discernment. So discernment assesses the viability of an idea. Is this going to work? So they discern and make sound judgments, and they often rely on instinct and intuition. So it's not very tangible, and that's hard for some people to deal with. But they
Mhm.
know in their gut, say it's a
Okay.
gut feeling, they're able to evaluate things well, refine ideas, tweak the product, adjust the service. And that's very beneficial because they help the team or the company avoid the ideas that aren't good and refine the ones that aren't yet ready. And that's a huge benefit to a team and to an organization. And what they
Uh,
crave is trust,
okay.
because this type of genius is very intuitive. And as I said, it's not very tangible. So they want you to trust their instinct as they assess something. And I understand that's difficult, especially if you're in a business or an organization that's all about the facts, the figures, and the numbers and the finances.
Sure.
But you will see over time that these people have a track record. If you start to trust them, by and large, they're correct. They're right in their judgments and in their instincts and in their intuition.
Okay.
That's great. We're going to get into it more, but as you're breaking down each one, you're also saying that we operate with two as our lead geniuses. So just wanted to make that distinction. Let's go down to galvanizing.
Galvanizing rallies and inspires people and pushes them to action. So it's an unusual word, but when you create new words, a new language, it creates a new culture. And so the working genius model is also trying to create a new culture in the workplace to help every individual derive the most joy and energy from their work, which brings more fulfillment and leads to happier, healthier, and more productive teams. So galvanizing, this genius rallies and inspires people, pushes them to action. They're very persuasive. This genius is highly needed in marketing because
Mm,
you're trying to rally people, inspire people, persuade people for some product or service. So there's a lot of excitement and enthusiasm around the product or the service. And they crave a reaction. So they get crushed by apathy, by no reaction. When they crave a reaction, so they want engagement, they want buy-in, they want positive confirmation. That's what they really crave when they show up with their genius.
Yeah, I've got some people in my mind.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, as you describe each one of these,
Yeah.
people come to mind and say, oh, that's that person. They're really
Uh-huh.
naturally
Well,
gifted area.
yeah, it's nice to be able to look at people you work with, but also your family, good friends, where you would do things together. And how do we, best use our skills, our abilities, our backgrounds, but this tool here to work well together. We've
Exactly.
been
It does have implications beyond the workplace
Right.
to personal relationships, to marriage, to family dynamics, for sure.
Well, let's go. Let's tackle the next two, enablement and tenacity. And let's start with enablement.
Okay, so enablement is the genius that derives joy and energy from helping support, assist, encourage people in the implementation of the idea or solution. So they're often saying, "How can I help? How can I help?" Sometimes there's stories or experience myself where sometimes you have bad feelings delegating something to someone or putting something more on someone else's plate. But actually, if they have the genius of enablement, they get energy from helping you,
Right.
from assisting and supporting the idea and the project. So these people are important. This genius is important because it also leads to team cohesion or unity. So they're also very focused on that greater interpersonal appreciation that's going to lead to that cohesion and that unity of the team. They crave appreciation. They want to be acknowledged for their value. When you say that made a big difference, you really helped. That goes right to their heart, straight to their heart. They crave appreciation.
I
Genius of
think
it.
of a situation in the past where I tried to force someone into I think the invention mode, and they were enablement,
Mm.
and it stressed them out. I'm thinking, just do it.
Yeah.
It's not complicated. For them, it was
For
not a
you, it
fit.
was not complimented. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is actually humbling in some ways
Yeah.
to go, if I try to force how I am on somebody else,
Mhm.
it will cause problems and discouragement, frustration.
One thing we like to say, it removes guilt and judgment for not being able to do certain things, in
Okay.
this case, invention, and for understanding people in a better way. It removes guilt and judgment between coworkers.
Christina,
I
what were you
think
going to say?
I was just gonna say, I think what it does too is to go, well, why can't you get this? Go, I get this. So I
Mm.
bring this strength. Oh, you get this. That's hard for me. You bring this strength. Like you said, it removes that judgment away. True confessions. The two of us work together. And some of the things that bring me the biggest joy are the things that flat wear him out. And
Yeah.
we are so
Vice
guilty
versa.
of
Yeah.
going, why can't you get that? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
So yeah.
Why can't you just do this? Why can't you just be like this? It's so easy.
So
Right.
it removes my blind set that
Yeah.
everything that is just so easy is not just so easy for everyone else. And that's why a team knowing their strengths is valuable.
Okay,
Right.
we have the last one, tenacity.
Tenacity, as the word implies, very tenacious. So this genius ensures successful results. So they're pushing and pushing, pushing, very tenacious until the project gets finished. They ensure that the desired results are achieved. So in one word, execution. These people are achievers. They're good at execution, getting things done. Crossing tasks off a list brings them a lot of joy and energy. These people will even do something and then add it to their list just so they can cross it off. Who's guilty? Who's guilty of that? I won't point fingers, Christina.
You've got my paper, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah. And
Oh,
obviously, this genius is hugely helpful because this genius makes sure projects get completed. As I described in the first podcast episode, this describes a workflow from wonder at the beginning to invention, and I'm sorry, to tenacity. And
mhm.
those at the beginning of the workflow, wonder and the genius of invention, they're often not so gifted at finishing the tasks. And so they get bored, they're coming up with their next idea, for example. And tenacious people, the genius of tenacity is very important for teams to push things across the finish line and to be completed on time and completed with the right standards from the boss or the organization. So
This
very
podcast,
significant for
Nate,
teams.
is an example of that, and how we work together, Christina and me. I'll have these ideas. Hey, this would be a great episode or a great series, and I'll jot down some thoughts. And
Mhm.
these come to me all the time, and I'll put them on our on a document, and I can overwhelm her at times because I've got maybe 30 ideas here.
Yeah, yeah.
Then she comes in though, and she says, "Okay, this is a great idea. This one is more of a maybe a Facebook post.
Mhm.
This is actually a good episode idea." And so she helps me develop it, and then we begin to record, and this is how it happens. But it begins with an idea.
Yeah, that's a great example of how you guys complement each other really well. Yeah, and your geniuses.
Well, great lead in. We did take the assessment. And so we were not shocked by the results of our assessment, but take us through our assessment so that maybe the one listening, again,
Mhm.
you'll get a more in-depth consultation with Nathan, but kind of go through what you saw with ours and our reaction to that.
Yeah, after you take the assessment, you get a really nice 10-page, very thorough, customized report to with your results. And the first thing I always ask people is, does the profile report resonate with you? I
Mm.
always like to say this is a productivity tool with a personality touch because geniuses are embodied by people. So, of course, it describes how you're wired, but really mostly how you show up to work and what geniuses you bring to work. So, that first question to you guys, Christina, did the profile report resonate with you? When you look at your results of your two working geniuses, your two working competencies, and your two working frustrations.
Christina,
Yeah, for
what about you?
sure. Yeah, the things so on my results page it sums up my pairing of my two working geniuses, and when it affirms things that it talks about doing things efficiently and effectively to avoid wasting time and energy. I know that I have maybe cut people off or sped things up to go, okay, can we get to the point? Because in my mind, we're wasting a lot of time. We don't need this extra 15 minutes. You've said it, let's move on.
Yeah.
And so I want to be highly efficient. I don't want to waste people's time. I want to get to the next thing. So that was affirming. Now, how I present that, sure, it probably needs some finesse at times, but
Yeah.
it was so affirming of, oh, that's maybe my motivation to, I don't want to waste people's time. I just want
Yeah.
this to be efficient. So
And do you want to reveal to the audience what your two geniuses are?
yes, mine was discernment and tenacity, which wasn't a surprise to me, but
And maybe
yeah,
some two working frustrations as well, just so the audience knows.
yeah, my frustration was the galvanizer and the wonder.
What about you, Chris? Did the profile report resonate with you? And if so, how?
Very quickly, and I have not had a chance. We took this yesterday to go over it in detail yet, but mine were discernment and invention. My strengths were that give me energy. And as I just said a minute ago, with like, for instance, the podcast, I'll have these ideas just flowing all the time. Or we could do this, or what about this? We're talking about our work with this nonprofit organization. Discernment, you said the viability of an idea. We use instinct. I mean, that resonates very deeply with me.
Mhm. So you mentioned a few examples, but that would be my next question. How do your geniuses play out in your work? So, Chris, you mentioned invention, generating ideas for the podcast, for example, and discernment, just instinctively evaluating ideas. Christina, what comes to mind for you? How do those geniuses of discernment and tenacity show up in your work? Can you think of any example?
I think for discernment, we're both pretty high on that, but I think coupled with Chris's invention piece, sometimes the invention leads and
Yeah.
maybe the discernment takes a back seat. So that's where my discernment, like, because we're a mentoring nonprofit, we have a very strict lane. And I remember at one point wondering if we were supposed to pair with another organization, but they were mentoring with children. And Chris was like, oh, oh, there's these possibilities. And I thought, no, that's not our lane. It was very, very clear to me. So
Yeah.
where his
True.
invention was leading, my discernment could come up underneath that and go, yeah, but this is really, and because of his discernment, he could step back then maybe away from the I invention so much to go, yeah,
Mhm.
that's probably true. So we complement each other really well there.
That's a great example. And you also touched on something that 3 of these geniuses are responsive, or you could say proactive, and then the other 3 are reactive. So you use the words lead with. So
Okay.
invention is often very proactive, and then discernment is reactive. Equally valuable, but in terms of the flow, kind of what comes first and second, you touched on an important dynamic there, how they interact.
Well, my working do you say working frustrations?
Yep.
Okay.
On
Are
page 2 of
enablement
your
and tenacity.
Mhm.
And yet my wife's her main strength is tenacity, or discernment and tenacity. So we
Yeah.
have discernment in common, but tenacity, that is can be my frustration. And we've seen that in our work together. We've had to stop and say, okay, let's stop. Let's try to understand one another. But then enablement, they need support. And I want to give someone, okay, I have this idea. I want to give it to someone and go with it. I don't want to have to give all these details or check on them, but
Mhm.
it's necessary sometimes, and that frustrates me. Or for
Yeah.
someone to say, you know what, you haven't complimented me in a while.
Yeah.
That kind of gets on my nerves. And
Yeah.
I think I'm a kind person. I care about people, but I don't think sometimes about this person need encouragement today in their support role.
You touched on something very, very important, Chris. And that was one of the first thing I noticed when I compared your reports. I noticed tenacity was a frustration for you, Chris, while it's a genius for Christina. And so that's a great way to complement each other.
I think where we see that play out is if there's a particular project where I'm fueled by, I may be tired and worn out, but I'm fueled by, let's just keep on going to finish this.
Yeah.
And it's like, he is done. So I think moving forward, then I just keep on going and he blesses me to just keep on going where he
Yeah.
can go off to something else.
Yeah.
Or
Huh.
we create a project so that all of his gifts are used at the front end. And when he's done bringing what he needs to bring to the table, I just go with it. That
Okay,
feels like the better thing.
that makes total sense. And this is where we've had frustration, or I've had stress, unexpressed stress.
Yeah.
Like I have the
Oh, it's been
idea,
expressed.
well, not verbally, maybe my body language, my facial expression, but where this idea and you agree with it, yeah, let's do this. But then I felt like at times I had to stay in the project 100%,
Mm.
and that would wear me out. I think
Yeah.
I need to go to this other thing as opposed to going, Christina, are we good on this? You're good to go. Now you take your part and just run with it.
Yeah.
That has helped a
Actually
lot.
gives the person joy and energy to run with it and gives you, or say, releases you from that frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Very good. Very
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
good.
did that. We did that yesterday, actually, in our
Yeah.
planning and our work yesterday. We're
Yeah.
working on a corporate sponsor program for our nonprofit, and these ideas, and Christina has been putting it all together in this beautiful package. And I
But you
haven't looked at
throw
it in a
out the
few.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah, throw out the idea, and then potential and possibilities, and then Christina puts it in a beautiful package. But I have felt guilty in the past that not staying on top of it every day. Saying, wait a minute, I'm not just shoving it on her. That's actually her gift. Nate,
There it
that helps
is.
me
Yeah.
to relax.
It removes guilt. So you were feeling guilty. And now that you know this and have this language, it's something you do intuitively, right? These geniuses or this model just identifies what you're already gifted at, but it brings it to the surface and gives you language for it. And in one personal benefit is that it really removes guilt and enables you to function better with other coworkers.
I think one thing the listener, having gone through the assessment and like Chris said, we've gone through the generals, but I'm looking forward to really jumping into it. But what it does for me, it gives me compassion, especially for the other people I'm working with to go, okay, this is where I can lead out. So if there's a project coming down the pike and there's 4 of us that we work with, I can see a project and go, I'm not the person to lead out on this. This person is. It helps everybody stay in their lane and not feel like, well, it just gives so much clarity. Just such a simple thing with so much clarity.
Yes. Yes.
Well, Nate, our nonprofit, it's about relationships at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so if I don't honor someone else's working genius, but I try to force them into something else, I'm not actually respecting that person. I'm not honoring them. And
Right.
it will, and just productivity wise, it will come back and be a problem.
Yeah. And it really helps you. It's a tool that helps you understand people so much better for mentoring, really.
Yeah, I have been assessing some the wonder component is one of my frustrations, and this makes so much sense when I'm around certain people who are leading with the wonder component. I'm like, okay, let's just get on with the show. Let's just, yeah. And so
They're like, I wonder when we should do this. And you're like, okay, which day, which time are we talking about here? And they're like, no, 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 we're just wondering here. And you're like, all
yeah,
right, let's take it out of space and bring it down to.
right. So it frees me to let them wonder and
Yeah.
keeps me in check in a healthy way to let them flourish in their area. And then I can come in when they're done.
Yeah.
Well, it would help just on a practical note, Christina, when you and I meet, and guys, as you listen to this, whatever working situation you're in. So when I believe it's time to brainstorm ideas on something, that actually say that, Christina, right now it's not what I'm thinking. I'm not thinking that we're going to put things on paper and it's done. We're just brainstorming for the next 30 minutes. Are you good with that? So
You
your
are
expectations are
right.
that we're just brainstorming.
And it's a good segue to a cliffhanger for part 3. We're going to focus
Yes.
on not only unlocking working genius for teams, that's going to be the big picture topic, but the genius of meetings. Because you said, Christina, when you and I meet, and whether you're meeting with a group of 2 or whether you're meeting with a team of 20, meetings are
Okay,
an
good point.
part of our businesses and organizations. And you can have terrible meetings, or as I said in the promo, you can have meetings that suck,
Yeah.
is a very professional word, right? But it's true. Some people, sometimes meetings just suck.
Yeah.
And we want to remove the suckiness of the meetings.
Right.
The genius of meetings is something we'll touch on in part 3 of the podcast.
Will that be the title of part 3? Removing the suckiness of meetings.
Hey, that's your guys' decision. You get titled it however you want.
Okay. Somebody's listening and they want to find out more. Nathan, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'll put my email there at the bottom if you have any questions specifically. I want to follow up. Please don't hesitate to shoot me an email, nathan@workinggenius.eu. And then website is the best place to go to check out, explore more resources. There's even a link to a podcast from the Working Genius and to find out more about the Working Genius, workinggenius.eu.
And also, you're giving a bonus for listeners. Why don't you tell them what that is?
Yeah, I thought for the second episode, bonus number 2, for the first 2 listeners, I'll have 20% off of a 2-hour online workshop for your team.
Yeah,
So if you
that's
go to
great.
the website and click on request a workshop, there's a little form that you fill out and mention Fahrenheit Mentoring Podcast in the form. That'll know you're connected, you're a listener, you're part of the audience. Fill out that form and I'll send you an offer with 20% off.
Sounds great. Nate, thank you so much for this time today.
Yeah, my pleasure. It's been fun.
Well, and we're not done yet. You'll want to listen. If you haven't listened to episode 1, go back to the introduction of the Working Genius. Today has been super helpful as you explored a little bit of Chris and I's assessment. The third one will be looking specifically at how Working Genius can really add benefit to your team. So if you're listening today, please contact Nathan. If you want to increase productivity, but just understanding and have more fun in your team, reach out to him. As always, we hope that today was helpful. I know it was for Chris and I. If you liked this, like and subscribe, share it with a friend. Go to Nate's website and request a consultation. So as always, we want to thank you for listening to Real Life Mentoring Podcast.